You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
What the physical basketball
I was at the games,
versus
you were
physical
not.
fouling.
You watched them on YouTube.
Anyway.
I saw the game. I watched the game from the
Well, we're here. I'm Bob Moats. Welcome to X's and Joe's, a podcast dedicated to decoding the winning formula in college basketball.
And I'm Mike Wiemuth, welcoming you to episode 40, Data versus Drama, a view of modern recruiting, or measuring who wants to be a millionaire versus who could be the biggest loser. Recorded on the evening of Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. So, Robert, we have a special guest today, none other than our friend from the Back Home Network community, Stephen Ragsdale.
Yeah, great to be
Stephen,
here.
welcome.
Guys.
We're glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Longtime listener or engager on all the communities, and now excited to be here.
It should be noted, we're going to talk about this at length tonight, that you've taken engagement to a whole different level with the IU recruiting website, which we use frequently as we're preparing for this show and as we're following recruiting. So Stephen, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how'd you get into all this?
Yeah, so I've been an IU basketball fan as long as I can remember. Some of my earliest memories, I don't know if it's the tragedy of it, but one of my earliest memories is hearing my dad with friends from church talking about Alan Henderson's knee injury, and that just goes on from there. But obviously some beautiful memories as well, watching the Watt shot, watching the run to the championship game, just some long time IU fan memories. Third generation IU fan, and married into an IU family as well. So always been a big follower. But yeah, I think through a lot of your guys' work on the various communities, engaging with somebody called IU in Philly, started to get into the recruiting following game. And yeah, taking it from there to trying to build out a kind of website that would replace my Excel spreadsheets.
So you actually used to do this in Excel as well?
Excel, Google Sheets at different times. I was tracking a bunch of different things, and got into conditional formatting and all these kinds of formulas. And then I was just like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And yeah, I've been trying my hand at some website building, and IUrecruiting.com kind of came from there.
Mike, it's almost like these are Jedi. Like you're the Jedi and you're finding Force sensitives to come into the group here to train at the academy. I mean, it's really kind of got a bit of that sort of vibe to it right now. Yeah.
But also remember that so many of those stories usually end with like the master getting like struck down by the people. Which it has to happen. Stephen would be my choice for that.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate it.
And you've got 900 years if you're Yoda, so don't worry about it. I've always kind of you're fine. You got some time.
Yeah. Stephen, I'm curious about that. So you said you kind of followed what I was like posting on in like peas and things like that. Did we ever interact like at any point? Like, did you ever send me anything or?
No, like direct chats, but definitely like engagements on threads on Peaks.
Okay.
As I was do
you remember what your handle was?
I was just SP Ragsdale.
Okay.
I went with my actual name on Peaks, but
okay. So you'd have
one of the rare people to actually disclose my identity on there.
You mean you made good faith arguments, publicly? Wow.
And I did this just so that way I kind of was kind of governing my own behavior, so I just didn't turn into a jerk online. That was part of my thing, was that if I'm somebody else and nobody knows who I am, okay, I can fire off.
Yeah, it's probably best to keep me on my best behavior.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I tried to stay out of the worst of the nonsense over there.
Yeah. Well, welcome, and we're definitely glad to have you. And it's always good to kind of interact with folks, but especially someone who's gone as far as you have and trying to actually expand sort of our understanding and knowledge of the recruiting process. And so that's always welcome on our show. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for all you guys have done to kind of make better conversations about recruiting.
Happy to.
So speaking of recruiting, I mean, we're kind of in the middle of talking about recruiting. Like, we're going to be seeing some commitments coming through. That first real wave of the 2026s are coming in, while simultaneously we've seen the basketball season is here. They're doing the full practices. They had the hoops on Kirkwood, I believe, where Trent Sisley, I think, hit a shot from the up. Was it upstairs that he hit it from?
Five Guys.
Or Five Guys.
Oh, above Five Guys, yeah.
So there's got to be an advertisement at some point from Five Guys for that.
I was actually trying to think of a Way Downtown reference, but I don't know if that actually works for that, but you've got, there was some really cool stuff that happened there. They scrimmaged, they shot a lot of threes. I only saw a few highlights. But I think for the most part, they're kind of what we're expecting them to be and kind of playing the way that we were looking for them to play. So I think that that's part of this. Whatever we're going to see starting October 17th, which is a short 9 days away against Marian University, and an exhibition. My wife's alma mater, I might add. So we'll see. We're going to see we will definitely see a different type of basketball, a different brand of basketball coming into Assembly Hall than we've seen in quite a long time. Since maybe even, I would even say it's going to be different than what we saw with Tom Crean, because I think it's going to flow a lot differently. And what DeVries is going to try and do is getting the quicker shots, getting more from the arc. Really, just going to be a different look. Mike, any thoughts you had over the last few days? Before we get into the actual recruiting meet, which we're going to be addressing a lot of the recruiting stuff there, but I mean, just any of the buzz, what were you feeling? I mean, kind of what you were picking up on. Anything from there that was interesting to you?
No, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, we kind of joke about the fact that, Sisley hitting a three from a burger joint that's, sitting above the street level. I do think that kind of stuff is, in a crazy sort of way, like, good symbolism. I mean, literally, you've had, as we discussed before, like 8 years of some of the worst 3-point shooting in the country, not in terms of volume, but also in terms of actually making. And now you have like a first-year coach, and like during like the big exhibition, a kid hits like some crazy viral shot, and of course it's perfect that he's a freshman from Indiana, so that's like all too like on the nose for like Hoosier hysteria. So yeah, I think like buzz-wise, it worked. It's a very familiar venue. I mean, everyone's kind of crossed that intersection, and doing something like that definitely has a kind of like buzz generating sort of capacity for the program. And so I think it's great. I mean, it's not the old-fashioned, let's just do a scrimmage at Assembly Hall and everyone come and just watch basically like a muted practice and then like take off and do the rest of your night. This was actually like involving the coach to the point where he was buying rounds of beer for people back at the upstairs,
which is
so
awesome.
That is not something that would ever happen in the night era or any other time there.
We would not have hit that. Speaking of that, real quick, I now have the reference we should use for Sicily. You remember that Michael Jordan, Larry Bird ad playing horse for the Big Mac or the Quarter Pounder?
Yeah, the McDonald's one. Yeah.
Stephen, you remember that, right? I mean, that's probably right as you're getting after you dated yourself, saying my first memories was Alan Henderson's knee injury, which I'm thinking I remember going out of high school at that time. So, I mean, that would be right up your alley, kind of as you were just getting into basketball, saying I'll play it for a Big Mac or play it for a Quarter Pounder.
Oh yeah, I've seen the commercial. I know that one.
Yeah. So any thoughts you have going into the season at this point, like what you're looking for?
I mean, I guess I'm viewing this year's season, this team, as the prototype for the DeVries era. This isn't the even the MVP, the minimal viable product, or even the final state. He's showing the kind of team he wants to have, the kind of players, the kind of player types that he wants to have, and He's just casting the mold, and then he'll recruit and gather a team into that mold and keep going. I'm not expecting a total rebuild, but it should at least give us a hint at where he's headed long term, when he doesn't have to fill 11 roster spots in one off season.
Right. That's a lot.
That helps.
Similar to somebody else who just took a job over a couple of years ago in Bloomington, who kind of pretty much rebuilt everything from the ground up, and is still continuing. I mean, I guess speaking of IU football, there's some excitement, going into this week with Oregon, but we recorded the last show right before the Iowa game, released it right after the Iowa game, and I will say it was probably for the first time in the Cignetti era where we felt like you could maybe argue the Michigan game last year, but there was definitely more tension with that Iowa game, that things just did not go to plan until the very end.
Yeah, you kind of compare it to like our past of what we're used to in viewing IU football games. The expectation in IU game is to win. You had to basically have everything go right. Like you could have 9 things going right, and then one muffed, punt, one missed block, one bad holding penalty in the right, in the wrong spot. And then that just meant you lost. And that's the funny thing that, now that IU has kind of established itself as like a legit top 10-ish team. This is actually the kind of wins that top 10 teams get. Like things don't go well. Things don't go exactly, to plan. You don't play your A game. You get some
you have a player injured.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Anything like just there's a series, like not just like one thing goes wrong, multiple things go wrong, and you still win.
On the road.
That's just such like a flipping of the script of the past of like, where I think IU fans, like as they're watching games like that, and you can kind of tell on social media, people are just like, oh God, this just feels like a loss. This absolutely has all the earmarks of a loss, and it wasn't.
And Stephen hit the nail on the head. On the road, and not just on the road. On the road, the last time we were there, there was a lot of optimism going into that Iowa game, in 2021, when the fans came back, and it was just like watching Blitzkrieg hit us. And then here we are now in a few years later, 4 years later, and you're right, on the road at one of the toughest places in the Big Ten to play, in the country to play, I might even add.
Yeah, I mean, it shows that it's a very different program, very different team. It's you trust them, which is weird.
Yeah, it is a little bit. It is a little bit of an unsettling sort of feeling, just because because of all the everything we've kind of gone through in fandom, and just nice to see him pull out the win. Oregon's coming up, seeing that the line's moving closer to a closer game for IU. We're hearing reports that there's going to be a pretty good IU contingent out in Oregon, so that's a plus. And Mike, you found something online that Galen put up that was pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, so I've been looking for that 2004, or was it 2003? Sorry, DiNardo era IU game at Oregon, where IU somehow pulled out a win despite getting like outgained by 300 yards and being completely outplayed for like big chunks of the game, but still somehow like came away with a win, which I guess helps that there was like a 7-2 turnover margin in IU's favor, which that helps. But yeah, so Galen posted that video of that game up on his YouTube site. So yeah, I watched the game for the first time in like 20 years, and yeah, it was. if you get a chance, definitely go on Galen Clavio's on his YouTube page and check out that game. I mean, you will never see a game where you feel like one team just completely moves the ball, sometimes at will, and just keeps fumbling it, and the other team is just barely able to eke out a win despite the other team literally handing them the game as many times as possible.
I've been there I've been there playing sports. I've been there coaching sports, where it's just, you feel like you've done everything right except score. And then all of a sudden you're like, how the hell did we lose this? So yeah, hopefully we'll see a similar type of result with IU in their next trip to Eugene 22 years later.
Yeah.
So now is as good a time as any to bring up our title sponsor, Home Field Apparel, where you can get vintage-esque t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coaches' jackets, whatever you're looking for, not just for Indiana University, but for a whole slew of college teams and other Indiana institutions. Also encourage you, if you're in Bloomington, check out Home Field at Tracks. The old record store, which Mike and I knew very well when we were there.
And they still have records in the back.
They do have records in the back. Stephen, when you were in Bloomington, was Tracks still a record store? I don't remember what happened with Tracks. Did they keep that a record store for a while? I mean, when I'm down there on Kirkwood.
So I actually did not go to IU. I went to a smaller school, but I was a fan from afar, so I don't know Tracks.
So you didn't spend a whole lot of time on Kirkwood, trying to buy the latest the latest CD. And Mike and I remember the days when we were buying cassette tapes or vinyl before they were called LPs. So it's for us, it's I'm going to get another year-old meme thrown my way, I think, tonight. so anyway, check out.
You get those every day.
I know. I kind of. It's like my coffee in the morning. I kind of need to get it for me to be able to function. So check out Home Field at Tracks, or check them out online at www.homefieldapparel.com.
All right, let's jump in. Data over drama. So, how do we want to frame this, Bob? I guess we want to get to Stephen's great website, but I guess maybe we should kind of like walk through sort of like, I guess, the evolution of our thinking about recruiting and sort of our experience of like how the conversation takes place online, and maybe some of the things we created that to counter that.
I mean, I remember kind of getting back into being more active in observations during the early part of the Archie Miller era. I'd occasionally jump in, but when I kind of re-upped myself more, just more publicly, I remember I got really involved with the Keon Brooks recruitment,
right?
And watching that sort of roller coaster, and learning pretty quickly that it's like this is rapidly becoming reality television for middle-aged men. And some women. And a friend of ours actually mentioned to me about why his wife kind of got him out of the sort of, online world. It's like, why are a bunch of old dudes sitting around worrying about what a bunch of teenage boys are thinking? It's kind of weird, isn't it? It's like, yeah, if you put it that way, it sounds kind of goofy. But I think the other part of it was it's like some sort of weird cross. It is The Bachelor. It is Dancing with the Stars. It is that sort of reality television with a high stakes feel to it that also then kind of veers into the Hunger Games to a certain degree, where the recruit is actually the game board that's actually doing the killing of some of the people who are out there trying to survive, while these other programs are trying to kill each other in the board itself. It's really kind of a fascinating thing to observe. But as we're kind of watching right now, as these recruitments are coming to the end and everyone's looking for that last nugget of information to say, oh, I knew first. I go back to the one that really kind of cured me of it all was Trey Kaufman-Renz, where it's like, we're sitting there all day thinking this kid's going to commit to Indiana. It's logical. It makes sense. Why would he play with Caleb first? I think Archie Miller's going to give him the keys to the store. And then in the most bizarre recruiting story I could think of, it was the halftime of a girls' JV game during COVID, where he announces on his buddy's student radio show, and the thing goes out on the internet, and happenstance somebody that had some either one of the Hammer and Rails guys or one of those guys picked it up and set it out on Twitter saying, "Hey, we got Kaufman-Renn."
Yeah.
And the whole thing is just, Stephen remembers. I mean, we all remember this. Like, there was this bonkers of wait. The guys like Jeff Rabjohns who covers it are trying to lock the story down, trying to figure out what just happened.
Yeah.
And the thing was out there already, and there was already sound clipped, and it's like all that happened was some kid hit record versus hit live versus record.
Yeah.
And it was a 16. And the only thing it was just, it's like at this point, it's like, okay, there's got to be Mike had already been looking at it differently. We both have been looking at it differently to a certain degree, but it was also a thing where we have to look at this more sanely from a standpoint where we're just not trying to play catch up as to what's going on with the 17-year-old who's usually thinking about pizza and PlayStation.
Yeah.
And, and we're all trying to figure out what school is this kid going to decide to go to. It's fun to a certain degree, but at the same time, it's also a thing of, well, there's also got to be a way to look at this more strategically.
Yeah. Bob, do you remember what night that happened? The Kaufman Wren day of the week it happened?
Was it a Tuesday?
It was a Monday. It was the radio release or the accidental release on a Monday. Do you know why we remember that?
Monday.
Oh, I'm guessing you weren't.
Because the Pigs chat was that night, and that's when everything like blew up. Remember,
they opened it early. Sure. They opened it early. Yeah, they opened it early, and then we actually made requests to friends of ours to get in there. It was like, you need to jump on real quick. You're being summoned to the Pigs chat, kind of like what we're seeing with the Discord. And again, all the more reason for you. Again, if you're following Pigs, or Inside the Hall, any of these great places that cover recruiting on 3. Wherever you're getting your sources, you can hop on Trilly. He has a great Discord. Get in the Discords. Do the same thing with Back Home Network. Make sure look at how to subscribe to that. Get into the Substacks. Read some of the content dropping there. There'll be more as the season goes on, as well as the Discord. That we're always having a good time in there.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun to go back and forth. But yeah, I mean that was a Peak Chat Monday night.
Yeah, that's. I think that was. I saw that as sort of like a seminal moment in a way as well. I mean, me, and from the conversations you and I have had offline about this kind of stuff, like over the years, I've in following recruiting, I grew a bit, I guess, worn out about all that stuff, the drama and basically just how the conversation was taking place online. And I guess, part of the reason I don't post as much of my data dumps as I used to is that, we have a place like this now where the people that really follow this stuff closely, people like Stephen and, people within the Back Home Network community, they see this stuff here. So I'll occasionally dump some stuff on Inside the Hall or Pigs, when I think it's necessary. But I just guess that the tone of the conversation was getting kind of weird. I mean, I would always try to jump in and say, okay, no, this is not how recruiting works. This is some data that shows that this is how typically the history of these kind of recruitments, progress. And also there's just kind of a motivated reasoning that guides people's reactions to recruiting events that data just can't possibly compete with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I find it extremely hard to maneuver around our caveman-like instincts towards optimism or pessimism when things don't go well or when we have to wait for more data points to finally, play out. So I guess that's at some point I decided to actually have some fun with it, which is where I came up with the idea of the bingo card.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, some people have maybe seen this before, but we'll, put it up for folks who have not seen it to get some experience with this. I created the bingo card many years ago when I noticed that every recruiting miss was met with this cascade of recurrent posts on fan boards trying to justify or, spin doctor a positive narrative on why a kid didn't pick IU. And as I started to follow other school message boards during their recruiting misses, these exact same comments were coming up verbatim within their websites. So I just thought I saved people the time and labor of actually typing out those messages on the message boards, and I just drop it in, whether it's a message board or Discord when the time came after a recruiting miss took place. For the folks that are not who are just on the audio only, I'll kind of read these out. But again, I actually had more. I think I had like a good 15, 16 of these, but I just thought that maybe a 3x3 would be a little bit more efficient. But
You've got a 4x4 version. I know that. I know
do.
you
Yeah,
have a 4x4 version.
now that the portal has come about, there's 2 or 3 like portal related
There's a portal
excuses
version.
that have come up that I think I'm going to add once I go to a 4x4.
It's like having the Gong Show. It's like having the home edition of the Gong Show game. It's like here we also have the Portal edition.
I thought
of
it
what
could be
is
a drink.
actually.
Yeah, you could
It
make
should be
this
a
a
drinking
drinking game if you go on like any website, for
Yeah, but
fans after their
you
team
might die.
loses a recruit. Yeah, you might go to ER with alcohol poisoning. Yeah, so the examples here, I'll just read them out real quick, just for people to let's see. So we don't want him anyway. He was never going to be a good fit here. Top 50 kids are usually prima donnas. This just proves we don't cheat. I prefer diamond in the rough kids anyway. I only want kids who want to play for IU. That one always confused me. This will help the current guys develop faster.
Yeah.
At least this gives us another scholarship for next year.
Yep.
And we need to win more games before we can get these studs.
Yep.
Which one's your favorite, Stephen? Which one just looks at it and you just want to be like, oh man, I just saw. How do I address this one?
I mean, the funny thing is I hear this the most from my fans my friends that are Purdue fans now is well, this just proves we don't cheat. We don't pay for our team players, and it's all just a money thing now. And so it's probably this just proves we don't cheat.
Yeah, that's interesting, Stephen, because I noticed that too. Purdue people focus on the cheating angle, and Notre Dame people focus on the academic angle.
Oh,
our academic standards are so high. That kid obviously was going to flunk out, so there's just no way he was going to make it here anyway.
I know there's a meme out there that someone created that has a picture of Matt Painter looking shocked. And every once in a while, when I see something with Purdue, it'll pop up out of nowhere. I don't know who did this, but it's basically saying, "Wait, you mean recruits don't want to play hard? A pair of shorts to play hard across the ass, and a free root beer float from Triple X as inducement to come to my institution," and that's kind of where Purdue is. It feels like so many times that's where Purdue is with this, where it's like, hey, we're going to give you a free T-shirt while everybody else is throwing in, doing agent type deals, and that's kind of where their fan base still thinks it should be and should be at. I would agree that that's definitely a Purdue sort of feel of, well, we don't have to invest a lot of money in this. We're going to get a good team because our guys are the guys that everyone overlooks. And to be honest, there is some truth to that. When you look at like Braden Smith and his biggest offer and is a National Player of the Year candidate.
Yeah. What's your favorite, Bob?
Oh, mine is it's between I only want kids who want to play for IU, and he was never going to be a good fit here because those two, in many respects, just kind of go to the whole idea that it's the front of the jersey, not the back. And there's some truth to that. Or, we don't really want a guy that has 25 in range because he's just going to shoot the ball too much and he could miss. And it's one of those areas where it's like, it takes that strength from a kid and tries to turn it into a negative. and really it's like, well, if he's not going to be a good fit here, but he's a good fit at UConn, don't we want guys who are going to be a good fit at UConn?
Right.
It's like when you compare the two programs. So from a results base, it's one of those types of deals where those two kind of make me kind of like, you didn't get him. And no, he was probably going to be a good fit. And he did want to play for IU, just want to play for somebody else a little more.
Yeah.
And now we have to do a better job of kind of selling who we are as a program.
Yeah.
It seems like it kind of connects to the whole myth around Bob Knight's teams that you guys have talked about. That's like, those were a bunch of diamond in the rough kids, and it's like, no, actually is like pretty solid, killer recruiting classes. Actually, is how he was winning.
Yeah, you're right, Steve. I think each team, I think there's thematic consistency across schools when it comes to like their own sort of bingo cards. but they're just little, there might be just like a word or a phrase or something that's a little bit unique to each school based upon their history and their culture, like you said. But yeah, you're right. Like I think a lot of like the experience of having Bobby Knight at IU shaped and sort of acculturated fans to like a very specific version of basketball, not one that's necessarily borne out in reality, like you said. I mean, Bobby Knight, like some elite killer recruiting classes. He did not win championships with the Ellettsville, starting five high school team. So yeah, I always find these sort of interesting, and I don't know if you guys like sense this too. When you read these, it almost implies like the coach was about to make a horrendously stupid mistake in bringing a kid to the school, but thank God the kid had the sense to not go to the school and completely wreck the roster.
Yeah.
What would have happened? What would have happened had we actually landed Eric Montrose in that with Damon Bailey? What actually? Oh, I mean, thankfully he picked North Carolina, and that way it gave Alan Henderson more time to develop as a player. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I only want kids who want to play for IU. That's still probably my favorite. Like, just even a philosophical sense. Like, when people post that, I will sometimes like private message them and ask them, do you think that like IU or other schools have like a Luca Brazzi going around as their recruiting coordinator, literally like sticking a gun to their head and saying, look, kid, either your brains or your signature are on that national letter of intent. Like, who's going to a school that they don't want to go to? Like, they're being coerced. So yeah, I never quite understood the logic behind that one.
No, every player on IU's team has to have a childhood photo of them in an IU jersey. That's the only kids we want.
That's true, because they truly get it.
Yeah.
Much like Scott May, grew up an IU basketball fan, right? There's no doubt there that was the case
in Ohio. Yeah,
in Ohio. I would just kind of add, the winning portion, I think, jumps in on this one as well. That we need to win first, and we talk about this a lot on the show. We talk about, we all three have talked about this, off this show and on different threads. But it's a question of this win first. Then you get the studs. Well, you kind of need the studs first before you win. And then that kind of leads us to the funnel. And I know Mike, with your HR background, kind of you have another slide that kind of shows how that works. Like if you're looking at a candidate, trying to get that person in, you got to get the ideal candidate to run the division before the division turns profitable. You don't get the ideal candidate after you don't get the candidate. You don't turn the profit, then get the candidate. You got to get the candidate to turn the profit.
Yeah. And I guess, as a kind of follow up to, the bingo card, like when I created that, I was also just trying to think like, okay, well, what are some other ways we can kind of like, again, take the emotion, take the drama out of like the recruiting conversation, try to use some tools that actually gives a kind of conceptual framework that is a little bit more logical and a little bit more data driven. And I basically just took this idea of the funnel, and the funnel is not something I invented. I mean, it's actually a corporate HR model for the recruitment process. And, I'm having an HR background. I just thought that, well, looking at this, it almost exactly mirrors the recruitment process for college basketball. Obviously, the big difference is that, college basketball, the kid is generally choosing the school, whereas like with a corporation is generally choosing the employee. So but otherwise, like the actual sort of progression from many candidates to one is essentially the same. And if you see like in the example I have here, this is what you'll see at many like, HR bulletin boards within the recruiting department. As you move from the top of the funnel to the bottom, you're basically reducing the number of targets from many to a few. And eventually till you just get one person at the very bottom, which in the corporate HR case is the new hire. So in hiring, you start with several hundred resumes, you get down to a few dozen to perform phone screens. And then from there, you cut it down to maybe 5 or 7 people to do in-person interviews. And from that, you get a new hire. So that's the corporate view of that. So I decided to basically take that model and apply it to college basketball recruiting. And so I started creating my own sort of like funnel models for analyzing how teams are looking at their own, let's say, filling of particular slots within their roster. In this example that I'm using here, it's just taking one school and one slot at one particular year in the recruiting cycle and just sort of like graphically displaying exactly like how the fund works for this team. This example, it's actually Kansas in 2019 and their wing forwards of that particular year. So in this case, 2019, Bill Self offers 10 like top 50-ish wing forwards. From that 10 offers, he is able to get 3 kids on official visits. And from that, from those 3 official visits, he gets 1 commit. So this is again, would look very similar to what you would see at a corporation once they get like, a particular like employee, exactly what you see with college basketball. You're moving from many candidates down to 1. And in this case, what I'm trying to show and is useful for the sake of like analyzing like recruiting success, recruiting failure in the cases where you don't get a good candidate is this idea of traction. Basically, are schools able to get a lot of like elite kids involved in the process? Can they make offers to them that the kids are interested in? And can you move more kids from the offer stage down into the official visit stage? And how many of those kids can you get from the official visit stage into actually committing to your school? In this case, I actually take metrics as you move from, point to point. I'll take the number of official visits in this example. You had 10 offers, 3 kids come. So that's a 30% official visit rate based upon the offers you made. And if you get 1 commit, that means you're getting one out of, you're getting a commit from 1 of the 3 kids that visited. So that's basically a 33% commit rate off of your OVs. So this is an example of a success story. In this case with Kansas getting Jalen Wilson, who is a heavy contributor on their national championship team a few years ago. I can show you like other cases where this is not actually happening. And unfortunately, in many cases with IU in the past, this is not exactly what you're seeing taking place. And so
No.
so this is what I've been kind of using over time in terms of how I look at recruiting. I know that every school's a little bit different, but for the most part, this is kind of generally how schools look at their sort of like recruiting procedure. They're not necessarily falling in love with one recruit. They're not doing what you typically see or in the narrative of recruiting it as it's, let's say, written about on websites where it's very driven by names and individual recruits. And again, that's not the fault of the people actually running the websites. I mean, if you're Jeff Rabjohns or anyone else, yeah, you get the name of the kid, you got to put it there. And then once the name is put out there, then the drama kind of builds. Oh my God, so and so just got an offer from IU, and then that's where things kind of pick up and the madness begins. So in doing this, I was hoping to get people to maybe look a little bit differently at recruiting and see it like, okay, here's the 30,000-foot view of it, not just, okay, 1 or 2 kids are taking a look at our school. And I think that's where Stephen, I suppose, did you, like, I'm questioning Stephen, did you ever see this when I put it out on Peegs or somewhere else, this particular
Oh
slide?
yeah. I distinctly remember seeing this on Peegs and being like,
Okay.
oh, that's an interesting way to think about it. I hadn't thought of how many offers you might have to make to then convince a certain amount to visit. I hadn't really thought about it that way. I thought about it probably a lot of the way like Mike Woodson thought about recruiting, which is I fall in love with one person for this one slot, and everyone else I don't care about. I'm just going to focus on Boogie Fland or Derek Queen or whoever, and that's the person.
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't happen, oh, darn it, everything went to crap. But this idea that you have to cast a wide net and then slowly move people through the process until you fill that one slot. was really, really helpful and eye-opening for me when I was just getting my feet wet in the whole recruiting following game.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
and I would
Go ahead, Bob.
throw out the whole idea was also very indicative of how programs operate. And
Mhm.
and you look at Bill Self, for example. Bill Self hands out offers like their flyers on the street. Like, okay, it's like you've been to Vegas and you see the dudes there are slapping the things, they're handing you the cards. No, I'm not really interested in this, but for certain services in that area, it feels like that with Self. He's just tossing offers out to just about everybody, and or at least in that sort of what we talk about the sweet spot. And then it's almost like, okay, so the ones that they're really interested in, they really try to get them on campus for that visit. And it is a low, like if you compare like commits to offers, it's a lower percentage.
Mhm.
But he usually lands because he casts such a wide net. He gets the right people. He gets the right person for what he's looking for.
Yeah.
Izzo, I think used to work very similarly too, where he would have kind of a fairly wide net. He'd go for several, and then as they heat up and as they get to the visit, after the visit, then you kind of saw that move.
Yeah.
Krzyzewski just picked up the phone and said, "You want to come to Duke?" And the kid usually would say, "Yeah." And if Krzyzewski was serious about bringing him there, there were some offers that were like, we'd like for you to come here, but we'd like for you to take a visit. We're going to talk more through the process. We don't want you to make a decision now. We want you to see what's out there. But like I was Shire same way. Like with Cooper Flag had an offer that moment and it was going to stay there. And so they could be much more choosy with those. And there were times I think IU ran into this problem with feeling like, well, we can be a little choosy. And I think, like Mike brought up the Keon Brooks we talked about that a minute ago. When it was almost like they had three main targets, they landed two of the three. When Brandon Newman picked Purdue and Armand Franklin, Armand Franklin picked IU and Brandon Newman picked Purdue, and then it was Trace Jackson Davis comes, and then the bottom fell out on the season, and Keon Brooks goes to Kentucky, and there was no backup plan. And then the next year, Mike and I, the infamous conversation we had for about 3 months. Well, what does IU's recruiting look like for the next class? Well, it's Caleb Love and Ethan Morton. They must feel really good about those two players because those were the only two on the big board, on that offer board for a long time.
Yeah.
And then when those two started going diverged, then Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal, eventually Jordan Geronimo, that was the class that kind of came in. Christian Lander was also he did went a year early. But so that was kind of, we talked a little about IU guard recruiting, but that sort of funnel, like that was choked off. And Mike Woodson, it kind of continued where you weren't seeing as many offers to visits. And there were some times where you saw a bunch of visits coming in, but there was almost like after the visit level, then they would pick their main targets. And that's where we talk about the Boogie Fland. It was Boogie Fland, Liam McNeely, and Derek Queen. And it was almost like they had to go 3 for 3 on those guys. And when they didn't, that was kind of the signal of the beginning of the end for Woodson. So it's that funnel portion, depending on your program, a lot of it comes down to where are you putting that emphasis on your hit rate. But it does make sense to fill that funnel high. And that's, I think, Stephen, with that with the IUrecruiting.com website, that's where we are. So we want to pull that up real quick. We can kind of look and see where that is at this point.
Yeah, just for people to know, this is a site that Stephen has created. You created this year, is that right, Stephen?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny how the origin story of it was that basically I was looking for a project to just expand my learning in technology. I work as a product manager by trade for in insurance and finance and a little bit in pharma. And I was looking for something that was more on a side project. And I was like, what's something that I care about that I can care as much about in 6 months as I do now? And so ended up with IU recruiting. Somehow got the URL iurecruiting.com. Still in shock about that one. And then it started out with I was mainly just trying to track all the recruits that offers that were going out. And keeping track of just that in a big table. But it was getting a little cumbersome, and I don't know, at some point we engaged in, you reminded me of the concept of the funnel, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's the best way to really organize this. It really is trying to build off of what you had there with the Jalen Wilson recruitment funnel. and look at what's happening midstream so that we can know at the offer stage, at the visit stage, are things progressing to tend towards us filling the slots the way we want.
Yeah, it's interesting, and yeah, I mean the tool is great. I mean, it's like I always wanted to be able to like have something that could sort of like take what I was basically like ham-handedly trying to apply in like PowerPoint and actually have it become like dynamic. And you like came along and actually did that. I was like, holy crap, this is this is like a dream come true. This is exactly the way I wanted like the stuff I worked on to come about. So, bully for you for doing that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's funny when I made it, I just thought I would be the only person using this, and then that was the shock that I was like, oh, somebody else wants to look at this. Okay, cool.
hell
So
yeah,
yeah,
it's awesome.
any way that this is helpful to other people, I'm glad to that's the case, and I'm trying to continue to evolve it and grow it. So
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Because I think in going forward, and we will, probably pull you in at other points, down the road for projects
Sure.
and other things. But yeah, like what Bob was saying, like with the Boogie Flan commitment, that was like the perfect example of why I wanted to like have something like the funnel around to talk with people about, because I remember that recruitment. It was like it sort of encapsulated, I think, the problem that I have with the conversation around recruiting. Like one thing I've always kind of noted is that I think just logically, fans tend to overreact to the bottom of the funnel activities. They tend to underreact to top of the funnel activities, meaning that like fans just like instinctively think, okay, did we get the commit? What happens on the commitment day? Did the recruit like pick up our hat and not the other hats? Instead of thinking about like what actually tends to lead to a higher probability of actually coming away with like a top end recruit is how many elite recruits can you get involved with, and how many of them can you get to official visits, and once you get like, doesn't guarantee outcomes, but obviously just over time, the more bullets you have in the gun, the more likely you're going to hit what you're shooting at.
Yeah, and like I think it's like watching a basketball game, but only watching the fourth quarter. It's like you don't know what led to the end result. Like you want to know, and the stuff that happens when you offer, that's what gets a kid involved. That's what gets you in the door. And then the visits aren't. I think sometimes people feel like, oh, anybody can just get somebody on campus, but like that means that you've progressed to the next stage in the relationship, that you are getting closer to sealing the deal here. That you are a finalist for them, because they're only going to go on so many visits, unless you're Darren Rippey Jr. This year. He's on like official visit number 12. But most teams, most players are only going on a few, and so by that point, you're in their top 5 probably if you're getting an official visit.
Can you click on Ethan Taylor real quick? Because I think that's a good way for us to kind of look at some of this here. You look at the finalists, and oftentimes that's where you see the visits are coming off as well.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so if there's an official visit, they show up under the finalists, which for Ethan Taylor is IU, Kansas, Michigan State, Oklahoma, and Oregon.
Which is kind of funneled now into the 2, which is really IU and Michigan State, according to most sources that are reporting on this. Or you go down to the Kita kid, but beneath him, that's another one that's a good one.
Yeah, this is an interesting one.
And there's another
Sayan Keita from Mali.
Keita, yep. Kind of a very interesting recruit in that, there's a lot of upside with this kid. But it's also a thing, we look at those finalists, and that kind of gives you also an idea along with the ranking as to where a kid is. So you can say, well, this ranking is, he's not ranked, but it kind of looks like he's a 5-star. But you look at the
kind of the stuff you hear. Yeah, he's international prospect, so he's not ranked by 247 or anything like that.
The
he's
domestic services. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but every recruit is like, no, this would be a 5-star if he were a high school recruit.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and you look at the offers, the old Sam Story conversation we had with the recruitment of offers, ranking, and that gives you an idea as to where the kid really is. Like you have a 5-star that has two offers. Yeah, pretty impressive.
This is like Duke, IU, Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, UConn. I mean, that tells you how good he is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that kind of gives an idea. So if we scroll down to where it says visited, that kind of again
Yes.
shows that next portion. And so of the 6 targets they've offered, 3 of them have been on campus at this point.
Yeah, they're hitting pretty good rate at the center position, which I know probably for those of us who've lived in the last few years, it's like, oh, great, just the center position. But also people have expressed all their fears about this year and how we don't have rim protection. Well, you look at the kind of centers that DeVries is actually targeting when he has a real recruiting class. It's 7 foot, 7'3", 6'11", with like a huge wingspan. Like he's looking for a rim protector.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, you mentioned the issues with doing so well with front court recruiting versus back court recruiting. It is funny, like you think about like the hit rate that IU had, like the rates of let's say the number of commits they got off of offers. IU had a pretty respectable like hit rate on, let's say, like top end 5s and 4s in the Archie Miller and Mike Woodson era. I mean, it was like actually very normal. It's like, kind of 15% or so. So about 1 every 6, decent big they're chasing, they got, one of them. IU's hit rate on like top 80 guards in the last like 8 years is about 6%. So only getting about 1 every 16 they're chasing. So that's where the problem's always been. And so like kind of dovetailing off of what you said, Stephen, yeah, I think IU fans are desperate to see the numbers around guard recruiting go up substantially to at least match what you saw with the bigs during the Archie Miller and Mike Woodson era, if not, do better.
So I'm going to quickly do one other quick comp before we jump over to, looking at a funnel comparison. Let's look at the shooting guards and then look at the point guards as well, real quick.
Yeah, point guards. Yeah, which one you want to go to first?
Let's do this one first, because this is actually where we have the one commitment out of this class for freshman recruiting, or for rising freshmen. Prince Alexander Moody. So they only went after 4, it looks like, in the high schools.
And like shooting guard, small forward is like a really fine line. I'm going off of whatever the position qualification classification was that 247, 24/7, whatever 247 put on him.
Right, and
so,
I think
Prince Alexander Moody, Junior County, Aiden Durkak, and Jordan Smith.
Yeah, and those, again, you kind of see how the funnel would work with a commitment where it's like, okay, it's a 50% sort of run there. But then you go to the point guards real quick, because I know that was one that was interesting. But there were only 3 that were offered, only 1 that actually got to campus. Did Brown ever get to? Anthony Brown get to campus?
He scheduled, but then when he went on his Vandy visit, they threw the bag at him, and
they got cut off, I think.
So some people may say that that's a concern, and we can talk about areas of concern later. But this would be an indication that maybe there's been some conversation that we've heard in the Back Home Network Discord, the possibility of Conaway getting a 6th year. So it could just be that they may be looking portal or looking at an additional year from a kid like, Tate Conaway, which means that they only went for 3 guys that they were very interested in, versus doing what they did with like the rim protector position, where they cast a very wide net of 6 offers and then try to funnel that down into getting 1.
Yeah.
I will also say about point guards. So if you look at how other funnels are going, so it's IUrecruiting.com. Let's do a funnel comparison of point guards, because I think that's really helpful. Because I was wondering, I'm like, why didn't we offer more kids? Because we just have the high level ones of Talon Kinney and Darren Rippey Jr. Those are the 5 stars, and then Anthony Brown, which was a 70, a sweet spot kid. And I'm like, why didn't we offer more kids? Well, let's look at a comparison between IU and Kentucky. And you'll see, like, this is what everyone was doing.
Yeah.
Like, they went after Kinney and Rippey, and that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you look at Kansas, same thing.
Fairly similar. Yeah, they did get Kinney. They got
Kenny and Rippey, which, they threw a bag at Kenny. You'll go to Arkansas. Same thing. Kinney.
Well, look at that.
That was it.
There's Kinney.
And it's like I think everyone kind of identified that there were some high level ones, and then after that, just go to the portal.
Yeah.
Well, look at starting lead guards on the last 5 national title teams transfers, almost all of them.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're going to be. So the question you would have is, would you want to hand the keys to your program over to an 18-year-old kid coming out of high school? If you're going, or do you want to pick someone like, Tristan Newton, for example? Would you want to? Would you rather hand over to Tristan Newton and have him for 2 years, or Clayton Williams Jr. for a year? Would you rather have that guy that may have played at a lower level but has proved that they can play against Power 5 competition, can actually play the game at a high level, and have years of season and experience and maturity to be able to do that? And I think a lot of times programs are looking that it's, I think, easier in some respects to find a lead guard in the portal because you have 362 of them playing right now.
Right.
You have 362 lead guards, and a good portion are going to be in that portal. And if you're looking for someone who's on the ascendancy, that may be a better investment for you. And then you take small forward shooting guards, like small wings, even some bigger wings. I want to talk about this in coming areas. There's a lot. Like, you could take a Lance Jones and turn him into a strong BPI type player. He may not have the level of BPI at his last school, but you put him into Purdue on that national finalist team, he goes from a 0 BPI to like a 5 BPI,
BPM,
pretty much just by BPM. Did I say BPI?
Yes.
Yeah. It's the RPI. It was still in your head.
No, there's something else I'm thinking with BPI for some reason. BPM. Sorry, with BPM, he's moving up there. Being able to jump from that into that box plus minus at a higher level just because he goes on a better team and his skills translate well.
Yeah. There's something interesting I noticed, and you're right, Bob. I'm probably going to start tracking this a little bit, but to look at targeting within the portal relative to targeting in a high school, it does seem, at least what I've noticed, is that there's a slight statistical tendency for coaches to lean a little bit more on portal point guards than other positions, the ratios that they chase, high school versus the portal. I haven't really totally vetted the data yet, but at least just kind of eyeballing some of the rosters over the last few years, I just kind of noticed it does seem like there's a heavy tendency for teams to really think, okay, we're not, like you said, not turn the keys over to a 18-year-old freshman, but we'll find some kid from the the Sun Belt or the A10 that has a lot of experience, that has shown that they can, ball out against better teams, and give them the keys to the car.
Yeah. And you can see that in the strategies that these other schools, that's why I do really like the comparison. It's my tool, but I like the comparison. They see oh, this wasn't actually just us. This is just how the industry was going. It was they're targeting these point guards. And when you look at the wings, that's when you're oh, that's a very different approach.
Right.
So why Kentucky, Kansas, and Arkansas to start?
It started by when I was developing this comparison. I was looking at just who were we going after the most, because once I expanded beyond just IU, I started having to do a lot more data collection, and so I had to be choosy. And I did some comparisons, not just on offers, but on visits, to show okay, the recruits that we were actually going after strongly, how many of those were overlapping. And Kentucky was by far the most. I thought it was going to be Kansas, to be honest. But when I built this at one point, Kentucky and IU had 11 or 12 recruits that had visited both campuses that we were in the top 5 for. So that was the overwhelming favorite for a comparison. And then Kansas was the next one. I think we had around 7 of the same recruits where we were both in the top 5. And then it was Duke and Arkansas were kind of in the next range. And so ended up going with Arkansas kind of for the Calipari. It gave us some three very different styles of recruiting too to compare against. Where Kansas is, like you said, the shotgun approach. Kentucky is kind of going for a middle ground. I think it's probably more comparable to how we want to recruit, the way they're going under Pope. And then Calipari is, shoot for the moon and or go to the portal. So it gives you three very different comparisons and approaches to recruiting.
And I think we had some discussions early on also about, well, would you want to look at a Purdue, a Michigan State, some other Big Ten schools? And it's like, I think part of it is when you're looking to break the mold of Big Ten basketball.
Yep.
And what this tells us is that Darren DeVries is very interested in not trying to build another Wisconsin or trying to out Purdue, that he's actually looking at doing this more like a Mark Pope or more in that vein. And again, when you lose Junior County, when Junior County decides to go to UConn and he's on your offer sheet, he's on your visit, Mike and I saw Junior walking up the stairs with Michael Poulter. He's walking up the stairs with Kenny at Buffalo Louie's a few weeks ago. There's he's there on campus. You're landing visits from him. Did he actually make a Purdue visit? I can't remember if he did or he didn't.
I think he did. I thought he did.
If he did early, he would have gone early.
I thought he did that same week, but maybe I could be wrong. So
he might have.
Go to 24/7.
He might have actually had he might have had a Purdue visit. I think he did, but it was like really early. So it was before he had really kind of closed his list down.
Okay. Yeah.
Blown up.
Yeah, he hadn't blown up yet. I do see that. As I'm going through and looking at visits and stuff, it's like, oh, somebody that did a visit in 2024, okay, that's very different than a visit in 2025.
Right.
That's I'm getting an official visit to try to get on the list.
Yeah. And so I guess the question as we kind of go into the next thought here is, are we doing well in the way too early to tell honeymoon indicator race? I mean, we are early. We haven't even tipped off an exhibition game, an official exhibition game in the lower 48 should be a best way to describe it. Cause they had the Puerto Rico thing, visit, games that they played down there a few weeks ago. But do we really think, at this point as we look at DeVries's honeymoon and, taking into account the fact that we are in a very fluid environment as to how recruiting is working, are we seeing some promising early signs?
Is that a question for me?
I think that's a question for you.
It's a question. It's a question. I've got an answer, but I'm going to hit you first so I can argue with you if I want to.
Okay. I think it's still a little bit early, but I would say that I think there's some encouraging signs. But I'll say that the market is so much different now compared to like the kind of stuff that I used to look at in the past. I mean, it's not like 2005 anymore in terms of how like recruiting flows. And obviously we'll talk a little bit as when we wrap up about like the portal and all that. But I would say that, under the circumstances, I mean, if you're thinking about like, okay, well, what are the things you would like tell somebody, okay, well, this is actually impressive that an objective observer would say, yeah, okay, that was a good get. Obviously you just signed a top 30 kid for the next class, which was someone who's probably going to blow up pretty quickly soon. I mean, like we talked with in the pod we did with Galen, in the reaction pod, I guess, to the Brandon commitment.
Yeah.
I noted that Duke and a lot of other teams were starting to take a look. I mean, he was about to go on a visit to Tennessee and some other places. So he was definitely, his stock was definitely rising. And so for IU to like nab him when they did was, I think, quite fortuitous, but also a good sign that, okay, yeah, let's shut everything down and said, okay, yep, Darren DeVries is good enough for me. I'll also say the Wilkerson recruitment, I don't think people get how big a deal that is in the market. It was not a small deal to get him away from Kentucky under those circumstances. Now, when you have those kind of wins, it shows you at least the one question I've always look at, when I'm doing the honeymoon analysis. Hey, is this coach going to make it or is he going to flame out? That's one thing I always try to track is, okay, are there indicators of capacity of this coach early on that he can go head to head and get recruits that will potentially save him and allow him to, get an extension and survive past, let's say, year 4? Those two indicators are pretty strong in favor. Now, again, when it comes to these kind of indicators, that they're all measured incrementally, meaning you need more of them. So far, there hasn't been a lot of commits that IU's lost that you look at and say, oh crap, that really hurt. Like that one is going to set us back. Now, you've got a few coming up that have the potential to be that. And they're the kind of wedge recruitments where you say, like, if the kid goes to IU, yeah, that is like a big plus in sort of the positive ledger. But if they go elsewhere, it's like, okay, yeah, that could be a little bit of a sting. So I would say that at least for now, we're still a little bit in the wait and see mode, but there are at least some indicators that, okay, that it's at least, let's say, on track for the moment.
Stephen, you just popped up the 2026 guys and went right to the small forwards, and I think there was a reason why you did that.
Yeah, Anthony Thompson, it just feels like the Anthony Thompson recruitment, which has gone, it feels like it's down to IU and Ohio State, is like, man, we got to be able to beat Ohio State for this in this scenario where I know he's from Ohio, but he plays for Indiana Elite, where we have deep connections through Drew Adams, where you've got a recruit a coach in Diebler who feels like he's already on the hot seat in year 2, after year 2, who it feels like, people have been saying this in the Discord. This feels like a reverse Braylon Millen situation where, yeah, all the indicators would say go to Ohio State, but that coach situation doesn't feel very secure. And are you sure that it's going to be a good situation for you, and ends up at the bigger program? I feel like that's one I'm watching to see if we can pull it out, especially because a lot of our other small forward targets have started to drip off. Where Anthony Thompson was the last one standing from the offers that hadn't committed somewhere, or at least hadn't moved to a finalist stage. Now they did offer Von Carvala, so we got one other offer, and he scheduled a visit. So that'll be another one in the conversion from offers to visits camps, and that's a sweet spot kid. So it shows that they have irons in the fire beyond the official visits or the offers that they've already scheduled or put out there. But definitely, I'm keeping a close eye on that one.
And I think that's, as we kind of look at that whole, promising early signs, they got into that recruitment. They got it down. If you want to click him real quick, Stephen, I hate to add, I just want to be able to
for
see
Thompson
that
or Carvala.
Thompson here. And you look at the Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio State, and Texas were the 6 that seem to really kind of just be in that. And again, you don't get a silver medal for coming in second in a recruitment. You don't. It's just you lost the recruitment. The player went somewhere else. I would say there's a desperation more at Ohio State to land him than it would be
for sure
at Indiana. I feel like IU could find an effective stopgap in the portal for that. They also have, you still have Trent Sisley, who could probably be an effective 3, very similar in size to Thompson, I would think. I mean, they're both like 6'8", 6'9", so they're bigger wings. They can play together. We were talking about the Allman kid also, who was potentially we were debating, could all 3 play together, because how they're targeting this would be you could play all 3 together and put Allman more as a defensive 5 and just spread the floor out more effectively. All 5 can shoot it. Allman's a very effective driver. Thompson's growing as a driver and a slasher. We think Sisley is going to be growing as a driver distributor as well as an effective shooter. So you look at those players and you can see, again, back to what we were talking about earlier with, how DeVries, we're seeing with how he's building these rosters, how he wants these teams to play. Mike, I'd also throw out another recruitment they won in that early was Reed Bailey. Winning that recruitment as the big that they had in the transfer portal was critical, I think, for this team, because it kind of showed what IU was looking for from a big man in those areas. And I think that I do know that, that's an area of concern, that that as we kind of look at this, the areas of concern there are, if you lose Thompson, what's the next part of the plan? If Carvella works out, that might be effective and acceptable. But I mean, at this point, the offer to visit seem to be fairly, I'd almost use the word impressive at this point. I mean,
I think
they're
so.
getting between a third to half of their guys are getting on campus. And even if they just end up with a class of 2 or 3 out of this first freshman class, I think you're going to have effective players. And I think that whatever he doesn't get here, he can get out of the portal.
Yeah, one thing to kind of keep in mind about, let's say, the target numbers of today's college basketball versus 10, 15 years ago. In the past, when there was no portal, and you're trying to build like a championship level roster, I mean, you had to have basically like that slide I put up with what Kansas did trying to get Jalen Wilson. You just had to flood the zone with tons of offers, and you had to do it at every position. I mean, like if you were trying to fill like 4 or 5 slots, then you had to do that at almost like
25
every slot. Right.
Minimally 25 offers, right? Minimally 25.
At least, again, depending upon what your hit rate is. I mean, if your hit rate is 10%, then you might have put out 10
50,
offers to possibly get at least
one
kid at one position. Now what you're seeing is, especially, and you note this with, and it is a good sort of like trend analysis, looking at the coaches now that actually have a little bit of mojo going for them in college basketball, kind of the younger guys that actually have a little bit of momentum going. What are they doing right now in recruiting? If you look at, let's say, Florida, Louisville, and Michigan right now, what their proportions look completely different than what you expected if you're doing this analysis like 20 years ago. Florida has 2 elite high school kids coming in next year, and Ingram and Lloyd.
Right.
But then they have more elite kids coming in from the portal, including the aforementioned Boogie Fland, which we discussed at the previously in our prior segment. Louisville, they have 1 elite stud in Mikal Brown. They have 3 overseas bigs, and then 3 high-end portals, including Ryan Conwell and McNeely from Virginia. Dusty over at Michigan, two elite high school kids, and McKinney and Grady, and then 4 elite portals, including some familiar names like Mara from UCLA, Johnson from Illinois, and Cadeau from North Carolina, and Lendborg, Lendborg, who will probably be an NBA first round pick. So that's the way a lot of the guys that actually have the most access available to them, that's the sort of proportions that they're looking at in terms of portal versus high school. And so if you're an IU fan, you're kind of looking at it's like, oh my God, we only may come away with 1, maybe 2 good high school players at most. I mean, my God, the coaches with the most momentum right now, that's what they're doing as well. So I think it's important to keep in mind what the target is here. What, like we're grading on a completely different curve than maybe what you're used to, and certainly what even I've been used to, analytically speaking. So I think it's good just to keep that in mind when we're having this conversation about the numbers, and whether people are fretting about the lack of numbers in terms of the high school commits.
Well, and we have to realize.
Go ahead.
Before I'm going to jump, we also have to realize that this guy, that this program also just hopped across the Atlantic Ocean, went to Marshall Tito land as Randolph Churchill, and started pulling guys out of the out of the former Yugoslavia. We just pulled 2 players internationally. So if you're looking at a project, if you're looking for developmental projects, or you're looking for a player that might be fitting your system, you've already landed a big. Mike, help me.
Achimovic.
As Achimovic and Ristich, right? That's how he says it. We have those 2 players that we just pulled from the former Yugoslavia going. So yeah, Stephen, I just wanted to throw that in before. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I just wanted to kind of throw in that's a part of it too, that a big piece of the equation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you've got high school recruiting, you've got transfers, you've got international recruiting. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. I mean, and I know I'm not trying to fall into the recruit with bingo of we'll win and then we'll get recruits. but even this is his first cycle with IU, DeVries, and I went and looked at Pope's because I think what Kentucky is doing at the small forward slot is incredibly impressive in their recruiting this cycle. I went back and looked at last year in Pope's first cycle, and they only had 2 recruits last year. It was 2 sweet spot kids, but they were both from like the Lexington area, and they got 2 recruits. And so I think if we came away with 2 recruits, we'd be like, oh my gosh, the sky's falling. But like, no, that's actually like kind of normal. And then you can see that in the offers for 2027, which you can look at on the site, or I can go there if we have time, but I know we're going low on time. They're really casting a bigger net. So I'm kind of curious to see how 2027 evolves as those offers translate to visits.
So to kind of wrap up here, that I think we're kind of hitting the idea of what's really kind of changed since, and really it's since, this is this year will be one of the first years without the COVID extras years. So that's gone off the table. A bunch of 23, 24-year-old college basketball players are no longer going to be really in the system like they were 2 years ago. The compensation era that we're in now, because some of these may just be the fact that, like, Anthony Brown, Vanderbilt's going to offer him top tier money because that will be a recruit they wanted to get. Would top 2% or 5% programs be offering the same money? Probably not, because they would see him more as a developmental piece. And then you have the portal throwing in with all the success that programs, especially since the portal's open, that these programs have actually, Mike's side program, Baylor, starts to trend, and it's worked its way through to where we are today, where Todd Golden just won a national title without any of those, really any high school recruits that were in the sweet spot, and did it on transfers and recruits who were internationals, transfers, and a couple of recruits who fit his profile. So I think that there is that big difference where it's like teams are appearing to be a little more choosy. There may be more teams battling with offers, for those top 80 guys, but we're seeing just a kind of a different methodology on how programs are actually seeking out talent, because there's just more streams going into this funnel.
Yeah.
Right.
What else are you guys seeing real quick to wrap up?
Yeah, well, I think you're seeing, I know the last 72 hours, there's, we've definitely seen, let's say, on the message boards, some anxiety to the point where, I thought, it was probably like prudent for us to maybe do some Cymbalta ads on this pod to meet the demand that was clearly flowing through the IU web sphere. I would say that right now, with people sort of reacting, let's say, to the numbers, and specifically the issues around competitive comp within the NIL era. I kind of reminded people, and this is something I brought up today on a few different places, that there will be a little bit of, we might think of as Moneyball prudence, that's going to start coming into play in terms of how some of these decisions are going to be playing out, not only from the kids' standpoint, but the recruiters and the programs. And like in Moneyball, you remember one of the classic lines from the movie and in the book is that your money is buying wins, not players.
Right.
It's like literally, like you're looking at dollars per win in terms of like how you apply and where you are sending your money in terms of acquiring talent. That works in Major League Baseball, same as going to be working in college basketball. And there's going to be people that are going to be analyzing that critically. And so, and as I've discussed before around the analytics around the sweet spot, 5-star freshmen normally don't saturate the leaderboard on the winning metrics,
right?
Box plus minus, win shares, all that kind of stuff, all the stuff that actually correlates to winning. 5-star freshmen typically you're not going to find many of them in like the top 50 or top 100. This last year, there were 4 5-star freshmen that were in the top 50 box plus minus nationally. It's Cooper Flagg, Knuppel, they're from Duke, VJ Edgecombe from Baylor, and Derek Queen from Maryland. And that's it. So that's literally 4 of the 20 5 stars, 5-star freshmen that were sort of quote unquote worth the money that they were getting. So if you see that reports about like certain schools maybe getting involved with a kid that's like an upper tier freshman, but then maybe kind of backing off a little bit or maybe getting outbid, that's going to happen. And frankly, you probably shouldn't worry about it too much because I mean, if you're really like looking at this, there's going to be a lot more upper tier juniors and seniors in the portal that are going to be able to deliver box plus minus that's even greater. Because if you look at the other 46 top 50 players in box plus minus, they're exactly the kind of players we've talked about before. They're basically elite transfers like Johnny Broom or Walter Clayton Jr., or they're the traditional sweet spot kids we've highlighted before. Tugler, Zakai Ziegler from Tennessee, Hunter Dickinson, Bruce Thornton from Ohio State, and Trey Kaufman-Wren, who we discussed before. Those like 30 to 80 kids that just kill it on the, in the mix once they become juniors and seniors. So that's something to keep in mind. I think for fans, just kind of keep their sanity as they're watching the drama sort of unfold as far as like when these kids are making their decision, because some of it will come down to money and some schools are going to play the game and some will be a little bit more discreet about how they use their money.
So basically you can get the Trans Am, and that's great to have a blocker car with Burt Reynolds driving it, but you got to have Jerry Reed and the dog with the semi truck to actually load the damn beer to get it from Texarkana to Atlanta in less than 24 hours. That's, you got to have that. You got to have the workhorses, because if not, and I think we were talking about this on the Discord earlier, you end up being like Rutgers, where you had 2 studs and a 500 record and a coach still on the hot seat.
Right.
Yep.
Or if Anthony Thompson goes to Ohio State, you're looking at a very similar dynamic, aren't you? Where it's like that's there's a reek of desperation at Ohio State for that Thompson recruitment more than there is at Indiana, because they need a guy that, and if they land him, it may not be the savior, because I'll tell you, the 5 stars didn't save Holtman either, if I recall correctly.
That's true.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this is a very the Thompson and Carvalho thing here is very interesting. Like, in the grand scheme of things, which one is more valuable to your program?
Yep.
For your kid, it's the middle sweet spot, or the top 5 kid who plays for 1 year at pretty good but shows potential and then goes pro.
Yeah.
And if you have the right guys around Thompson, you can definitely make some waves. That's the key. Sure. You got to get the right guys around him. But, it's not like all is lost if you lose a recruitment at this stage of the game for Indiana. Yep. So, well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. Thank you so much also for doing the work on this, on the website. It's a hell of a tool. And hopefully we walk some people through, if they haven't looked at iurecruiting.com, that's where it's at. And just take a look at it and run comparisons to 24. Again, you still look at 24/7 on 3, whatever you're looking for, but this is just a good way to. This is just a more effective way of looking at this from a more holistic approach, versus just looking at this where it's just a list of players and you don't really know where they are in the process. So thank you so much, Stephen. We really appreciate you coming on and doing all this.
No, I appreciate getting the chance to come and chat it up with you guys and introduce the tool. Yep, iurecruiting.com. There'll be a lot more coming there too. So there's a lot of ideas that I want to continue to push forward there.
And this probably won't be your last time on here, Stephen.
I will come on anytime you guys will have me.
When we need you to do more work, then we're definitely going to put it on you.
We pay really well around here. Trust us on that. Exactly. So coming attractions, Mike, we're going to be back, and I would say probably after the Marion exhibition game, we'll probably be talking a little bit more about the upcoming season. Mm-hmm. Probably going to talk a little more about just what to expect, like really what to expect from certain portal players and kind of that other side of the mid-major, what programs are actually looking for from some of those guys that are bringing up. They're looking to upgrade up there as well.
Yeah.
But again, being very reactive to what's going on the ground as the season gets going, and kind of seeing what are us expressing what we're seeing in real time. You know, we've got a lot of the foundational stuff out of the way, where, you know, most of you, and if you want to go back and listen to one of the other pods to get some better ideas on sweet spot recruiting or the honeymoon phase, they're in there. They're in the archive. And we're also going to bring on our new friend Bill, Ann and Russell, Ann's cousin,
Bill Murphy,
Bill Murphy,
author and IU historian extraordinaire.
He will be doing some of those, and maybe more, you know, kind of a long format where we kind of talk more about some historical stuff that we'll be releasing as needed. And we got some other ones that we're kind of cooking up with some of our Back Home Network folks that are going to be more fun type shows that we can kind of throw during slow periods. So anything else you want to throw in, Mike, before
No, and I would say that if I would kind of keep this open invitation to people, that if you think if there's a show concept or there's a type of question you have that would constitute a show, please let us know. I mean, you can, send us like comments within the YouTube comments. You can go on Back Home Network, the Discord, or you can send us emails. Or go on Twitter, because you can see us. We're reasonably active on Twitter. If you see any potential show that you think that would be interesting for us to tackle, please send it to us, because we have a list of about like 20 show ideas, and not all of them I think are actually airable. So I think if we can have some more that are actually useful and would pass legal muster, I think we would appreciate that. So again,
or YouTube community standards. And before I outro, I want to say that I think I called him Clayton Williams, who ran for governor of Texas against Ann Richards in 1990. It was Walter Clayton Jr. So before someone throws out on YouTube what I screwed that up, as well as the BPI versus BPO.
I was laughing inside, Bob, because
I actually called him Clayton Williams. That it could not have gotten that one more wrong. Look that one up on the Google's Kid. That's a lot of fun of a race of an old political race. If you really want to dig into that, find that on YouTube and enjoy that show. So thanks to Bob Thompson for the music and sound of the show, and special thanks to John Ringer of ringdesign.com for designing the logo and look of the show.
And this Endless Conversation was brought to you by the Back Home Network. Be sure to check out all the great BHN content, including the Assembly Call, Doing the Work, Football Weather, Big Red Carpet, Sideline Stories, The Dribble Drive, and Crimson Cast on YouTube and backhome.network.com. So until next time, I'm Mike Wiemuth.
And I'm Bob Moats. We'll be finding ways in every show.
Yep. Take care, everybody.